Good evening, Primetime Squad. How's everybody doing this evening? I hope everybody had a wonderful day, a wonderful Thursday. It is almost Friday, almost the weekend. Hallelujah. I don't know about y'all, but I done had a very, very interesting week. And I'm so anxious for the weekend. But make sure you guys click the like button on your way in. Make sure you subscribe to my channel if you're not already subscribed. And also, please, please share the video. Share the video, please, and thank you. Let me just make sure I got my phone lines on just in case. Just in case somebody wants to call in. I have the phone number up there already, but I haven't called into the phone line yet, so let me do that right now. But how's everybody doing? It's so much going on right now. I mean, I know I've done a little commentary already on what's going on with R. Kelly, and I thought that I'd give that a rest for a minute. But then I was like, well, shoot, I had seen some updated information on a story that had came out last year, regarding someone else. So let me put the phone on real quick. Hold on, y'all. But I was like, yeah, let me go ahead and talk about this. I don't know how many of y'all have heard about this story. It's about a pastor or a bishop, I should say, in Cleveland, Ohio, and his name is Bishop. Why I say pastor? I'm used to calling people pastors. His name is Bishop Joseph White, and he has a church in Cleveland, Ohio. I'm sorry, Columbus, Ohio. And basically, the story goes a little something like this. Approximately about a year ago, some allegations had came out, and it was regarding this pastor. And okay, the name of the church is Church of the Living God International, or CGLI. That's the abbreviations for it. It's a Pentecostal church. It's based out of Ohio, and there were allegations brought up, accusing him of sexual abuse and harassment of young boys and young men of his church, or in the same, denomination, like Pentecostal denomination. And these allegations go all the way back for 20 years. So I don't know if any of you guys have heard about any of those allegations or heard about this story. I guess there's been investigation going on for like the last year, and it all stems from witnesses now coming forward. Well, actually, they had started coming forward as far as this particular church, and I'll refer back to that a little later. But this particular church, allegations had started coming out like a year ago. There's a few victims, alleging that he's sexually assaulted them or sexually abused or harassed them. There's people in Ohio. There's people all the way down to Atlanta. So it's guys all over. Men, no women, no females, no girls. Young boys and young men. So if y'all heard about this story, feel free to put your 2 cents in, or anything you've heard about it, or your opinions or on anything that I speak about tonight. So please feel free, put it down in the chat. But basically, what had happened was, a few days ago, one of the victims reached out to a YouTuber named Dawson and asked him, well, basically kind of pleaded with him, I won't say as far as big, but basically the way he made it seem was like, he pleaded with him. He was like, please, I need you to talk about this. Nobody wants to talk about it. The church is covering it up. This man has been abusing young boys, for years, and nobody is doing anything about it. So the guy that he spoke to, he was like, at first when the story had came out, which was like a year or so ago, um, when it first came out, he had heard about it. But like some people, we hear about things and we're like, somebody else to talk about it. Somebody else to take the story under their wing and they'll run with it and they'll get the word out, do commentary on it, investigate, whatever. And like some of us do, I done that before. I heard a story. I'm like, oh, I'll wait till such and such because I know somebody else on YouTube that I watch and probably talk about it. I'll watch their review. So that's what happened. But then it was like it didn't sit right with him, and he heard there were more allegations. So he decided to do a story on it. So that's where I had heard about the story from. This guy named Dawson, and also a TV news station in Ohio, Channel 3 News, had also did an interview on this story. But basically, the bishop is accused of assaulting people in his church from minors to married men. Minors to married men. And the church has been hiding the sexual allegations for years. This comes to light. Well, the reason why I wanted to speak on this as well is because lately, there has been like hundreds and hundreds of priests that has been brought up on charges, kicked out of churches, lately, like within the last year. And the numbers are still rising. And the reason why these, it kind of reminds me of the R. Kelly situation. It kind of reminds me of the Bill Cosby situation, the Harvey. I can go on and on and on. Those are just popular names that has been in the news lately that, we can refer to because people have that in their heads, as of late. But it reminds me so much of that. A lot of these things go on in the churches and nobody ever wants to talk about it. And so, just like any other situation of a predator, when nobody talks about it, it keeps going on and on and on and on. And they keep touching little boys, children, young children in the church. And it goes on for years. And all these victims that are in the church, basically, as far as like this particular pastor, he has church members, congregational parishioners, whatever you want to call them, who has put him on a pedestal so high. Like, they put him on a pedestal so high that they're like, some of them describe him as the closest thing to Jesus, the closest thing to God. They think of him as that holy, as like the holiest thing on earth. That's how some people look at him, members of his congregation. These members of his congregation obviously have never, ever heard about any of the allegations against him from members of his church or from his community or, of his city where he derived from. Now, the church that he has right now is actually like an extension of another church that he used to belong to. This man used to belong to a church in Ohio. And back in 1994, there was allegations from members, young men, young boys in the church, alleging that sexual abuse, sexual misconduct, things like that back in 94. But instead of turning him over to the police, instead of calling the authorities, doing some type of investigation, they didn't do none of that, which happens all the time in churches. This happens all the time in churches. But instead, what they do is they either send them to another parish or another church or, another city instead of, making sure that they are investigated by authorities or turned over to authorities. And this allows them to go church to church to church to church which is really, really sad. I mean, it's really sad. And what happened in this particular case, this bishop, after they had heard these allegations back in 1994 from several of the young people in the church, instead of them getting justice or instead of them turning it over, I don't know what happened with the parents. I just know what the church did. The church had actually sent over some confidential documents over to Dawson, and it basically laid out how there was accusations and allegations back in the 90s, and how instead of turning it over to the authorities, they just put them out the church, basically. Just put them out the church. And then when they put them out the church, what had happened was they didn't tell nobody about it. The board, the board didn't tell nobody about it. They didn't notify the church. They didn't notify the church members. And some of the members, mind you, some of the members, because this is an international church, so some of the members live, out of town. Some of them was like away overseas, in the military, serving our country. So a lot of people all over the country, all over the world, had no idea what was going on with this bishop. As a matter of fact, the bishop started telling people he's just, branching out and going to start and open his own church, which he did. He did open his own church. This was in 94. And after he started his own church, what he did was expand. And now, to this day, they have at least 100-something churches all over the United States. All over. So, a lot of these allegations, what I'm getting at is a lot of these allegations, they're not just from Ohio. They're from Atlanta. They're from, different cities across the United States where they have other churches. And again, this happens all the time. People in the churches, they cover up when these deacons, when these pastors are, manipulating children, sexually abusing them, raping them, just sexual misconduct. And they just cover it up. And they either boot them out the church, or they push them down, or they put them on probation, or they try to deal with it inside the church instead of bringing the law into it, bringing the authorities into it. And this is why, like right now, again, as far as the Catholic churches and the priests, they have hundreds and hundreds of, oh my God, it's been all over the news. People have been doing commentary on it. I haven't hit on it yet because I'm like, okay, priests, we hear about that all the time. I mean, as far back as I can remember, we hear about priests all the time sexually assaulting altar boys and the choir boys and all that kind of stuff, right? We hear that all the time. This story, like I said, it's kind of along the same storyline, except for it's in a black church, a black community. The fact that it happened in the early 90s and the fact that he wasn't stopped then, and so basically for the last 20 some years, he's been getting by allegedly sexual misconduct with young boys and young men in his church. And it said from minors to married men. He even hitting on married men? Really? Passer. Passer. But one thing about it, I had read somewhere, somebody has stated, just like Cosby, wagged his finger at the black community, Joseph White wagged his finger at the people of God by basically telling them that they could never measure up to God. Only him. This is probably why a lot of his congregation looked at him and put him on a pedestal so high and would say things like, he's the closest thing to God. He is the holiest thing on earth. They really thought this man was of no sin. That's how high of a pedestal they had him on. And he had been, preaching for many, many, many years. He has over 100 churches across the country. And of course, these allegations that happen, nobody knows about them because they sweep them under that holy rug, sweep them under the holy rug. But anyway, the shoe done dropped. And all these young men are now coming forward and beginning to share their stories about how this bishop, has done some unspeakable things to them. But just like other, pastors, TV stars, celebrities, their stories get discounted. People ask all kind of questions, like, victim shaming. Why you wait? Why you wait now? And I had said something the other day about guys, about males, about men. A lot of times, women as it is already have a tough enough time coming forward and explaining and telling people what has happened to them because of the victim shaming. Because a lot of people continually put the blame on women when they are sexually abused, raped, or, assaulted. Men are even less likely to come forward and explain something like that. And it also has something to do with, their manhood. Like, ever since, I can remember, people refer men losing their manhood, like especially if they went to jail, went to prison, and they got turned out or they got raped or gang raped or anything like that, and it was always, they done lost their manhood, they ain't no longer a man, that's they girl now, that's their girlfriend, how, I'm sure y'all done heard the stories, y'all done seen the movies. So they are less likely to come forward than women are. But so people were discounting their stories, and some of the guys, they didn't come forward, immediately because they're thinking like the other congregation members, they're like, but this is a man of God. This man has healed us. He has taught us. He has blessed us. He preaches so well. He feeds the hungry. He's like a father figure to a lot of the males, in the church, a lot of the males who have no father and don't know what a father figure looks like or, what it feels like to have a father figure, in their life. And so that's some of the reasons why some of the men was like, slow to come forward. But just like, the Cosby camp, the CLGI, which is the church, they try to flip the script, on the victims by blaming them and shaming them and, why didn't you say something sooner? You know how it goes. But the thing is, like I had read, if sexual improprieties have not happened to you, I done said this before, if it has never happened to you, you will never understand. You will never understand. In so many cases, from R. Kelly and on, in so many cases, if it's never happened to you, you will never understand why some people don't come forward immediately. They just don't. And then like the Cosby situation, in that situation, a lot of people should have learned, how difficult it can be, to come out with information like that, especially when it's against infamous people, famous people, celebrities, people, on a high scale compared to just us regular folk. You know what I mean? But it's just harder to explain, for a man, especially a black man in a black community. And then it's against a black preacher. Okay. Black preachers are already looked upon as, I done been in the church since I was, let's see, how old? Probably about 4. Yeah, probably about kindergarten, preschool age. That's how long I've been in the church. Now, yeah, there's been some years where I was out of the church, where I was like, I'm chilling. I'm chilling on church right now. A lot of people go through that. If they ain't chilling on church, they just never go back. But, there was times where I was in and out. you know. And now, I go to church, I attend church, I have a church home, but I got several jobs, so some Sundays or some, church days I can't attend services. But I routinely watch it at least because our pastor goes live on Facebook. So I at least watch it, on the live, so I can feel like I'm part of the church service, just be watching it on my phone or whatnot, while I'm working. But, men sometimes don't want to speak up about these things. They don't want to be given labels like I said, that their manhood has been taken. Somebody might call them a punk, call them weak, call them sex, call them soft, or just flat out, you was gay anyway. If you let a man rape you, if you let a man sexually assault you, you was already gay. That, that's what some people have to deal with as far as men. Like, okay, with this pastor, a lot of the victims were already in situations where they were very naive, like as far as especially like the young boys. They didn't have father figures in their life. Their home life wasn't that great. I mean, it was a lot of things going on. And some of these men, he basically groomed them when they were young. He groomed them when they were young by helping them out all the time and doing things for them and, providing for them and stuff. These is the allegations from the guys that were interviewed, for this story regarding, for those of you who coming in late, if you haven't read the title is Turned Out in the Church. Sexual misconduct allegations against Bishop Joseph White of CLGI, which is a church in Ohio. I don't know how many of y'all done heard about the story, but the story goes back, over the years. And right now there's allegations, there's guys, young men coming out left and right, getting lawyers and suiting up for lawsuits. Because of the church hiding all these allegations and hiding all these young men for sexual assault and sexual abuse and rape, and they've been hiding it under a rug. And basically, like I said earlier in the live, just like some of the churches, some of the Catholic churches and other churches, they just sweep it under the rug. So a lot of these black men, in normal everyday life, they are afraid to speak out and speak up. So when it comes to like a pastor, a black, well-known, infamous pastor with over 100 churches, he's known worldwide. I mean, yeah, again, y'all know how it goes. Y'all know how it goes. But anyway, as far as this pastor, like I was saying, none of the information back in 1994 got turned over to authorities. The cops were never called. Charges were never pressed. One of the victims, he was like Dawson. He had interviewed 3 guys, and one of the victims. Well, okay, there's different sets of victims in different areas, but 3 particular victims. They have reached out to attorney Tyler Fox. Now Tyler Fox, he has represented some victims, in big Catholic church sex scandals, and he's now representing the three of the victims. There's many victims, but 3 of the victims have the same lawyer, which is attorney Tyler Fox, which is, he's known to represent victims of Catholic church sex scandals. Let me get a drink. My throat's dry. I said dry. Okay, ooh, real dry. But anyway, he's now representing some of Bishop White's victims. Their names are Lloyd O'Campbell, Kevin Glover, and Travis Durham. All 3 of these guys are claiming that the bishop sexually abused them at a time when they were all really vulnerable. One of the victims, Durham, he said when he was 17 years old, the bishop had exposed his private parts to him. Now, this is where the story turns. Okay, this is also why some of the victims have been victim shamed, because Okay, I don't know if you've ever went out of town with the church before, road trips, seminars, revivals, anything like that. We did when we were younger. Would take like, a big old bus out of town or whatnot. But anyway, and we would get hotels, and they would put a whole bunch of people in one hotel and just fit as many of us as they can in different rooms. Unless you had your own money and you want to, pay a splurge and get you a fancier hotel or whatnot. But anyway, most of the time, though it was like the girls in one room, the guys, in the sharing rooms. But anyway, for some reason, sometimes the guys would travel with the pastor on trips, because he has over 100 churches, and they would end up like sharing rooms. So Durham explained that he had exposed his private parts to him while they were laying in bed. So they were sharing a bed. Now this is where it gets kind of like you like giving a side eye, like what's going on here? But keep in mind, these are young boys who trust the bishop. They probably been going to the church for a while. Like I said, everybody has the bishop on a pedestal. He's all great, and the seventh, eighth star in the universe. They just put him up to a pedestal so high. Sure, they had a lot of trust in him, but still, I'm thinking, why get one bed? Why not get two beds? But in the mind of a predator, I'm sure he probably gave them some reasons why it was more cheaper to share a bed, cheaper for a room. I don't know why. But anyway, he was sharing beds with some of the young men and the boys in his church, in hotels, and exposing his private parts, and now these are allegations, okay? Allegations, not my words, allegations. Um, Durham said he would expose his parts and then start, playing with it and whatnot, and telling him, look at it and all this kind of stuff. And, eventually he would try to do something to him and whatnot. And sometimes it happened where he was touched. Another victim said when they were traveling and had got a hotel to share, the bishop was walking around naked. He got in the bed naked, and he just went under the covers and rolled over like he was going to sleep. And the victim was like, okay, it's just me. It's just me. It's just me. I'm just thinking too much. I'm thinking too much about this. Maybe the man likes to sleep naked at home. Maybe the man. I mean, I don't know why he decided, okay, I'm going to just get in the bed. I'm going to just, lay down. He probably had on his boxers, t-shirt, whatever, and lay in the bed. He said everything was fine till in the morning when he woke up. Why he said the bishop was spooning him? I was like, what? I'm listening to this interview. Like, everything was fine. Hey, 1 queen, 7 kings. Girl, I'm just giving y'all an update of this story. um, Allegations from a year ago, and past that. There was allegations years and years ago, but the church covered it up, and they didn't tell the parishioners, they didn't tell the congregation, they didn't tell the members, they didn't call the cops, they didn't call the authorities, they didn't do anything like that. They just put the pastor out. And so the pastor, he got out the church. No explanation from the other, from the community, he just started explaining to people, oh, I'm just going to start my own church. I'm going to just branch out. He even titled the church name the same as the church that he left, except for he put international in the title. So the original church where he came from, that was called Church of the Living God, CGLI. CGL. But he started his own church and formed his own church, and he called it Church of the Living God International, CGLI. And it's basically a Pentecostal church. And after he created his church and told everybody he just left the church, the other one, the old one, because he just wanted to branch out on his own, he ended up opening over 100 more churches all over. So he has over 100 churches. And for the past 20 years, he has been sexually abusing, sexually assaulting, molesting, all that, from minors in the church to married men in the church. And every time somebody come forward, the church will be like, we're going to handle it. We're going to handle it. You know, to keep it inside thing. You know, kind of like the Catholic churches do. They keep it inside. They sweep it under the rugs. They say they'll deal with it. And they really don't. They really don't deal with it. And they just sweep it under the rug. And the priest or whoever ends up continuing on with their normal routine, which is touching folks. Usually boys. But yeah, so this is just an update of what the story that came out a year ago when it first came out, and all these boys and young men started coming out and making allegations. I'm just giving an update because some of them has reached out to lawyers because the church hasn't done anything and they keep sweeping it under the rug. And it's crazy because some of these allegations, I mean, it's just crazy. Like, I remember, and if y'all have stories y'all want to tell, you know, let me know. If it's not too personal or something you heard of, feel free to put it in the chat or feel free to call if you want to call. I haven't turned on the phone lines yet, but if you want to call in, tell me to turn on the phone lines and I'll turn on the phone lines. But I haven't turned on the phone lines yet because I don't want to just have my battery running on my phone if ain't nobody calling in. But anywho, I remember when I was younger. And my mom had we had belonged to a church, and then we had started to go to another church. But I remember when I was younger, and I don't know how old I know I was a little girl. I was real little, probably I want to say maybe 6 or 7. Or maybe like 6, 7, or 8. I want to say around that age range. Because I know it didn't happen closer to preteens or, you know, I know it didn't happen around that age because I was a little more older and a little more smarter, and I would have probably tried to mess somebody up around that age because that's when I started like acting out and all that kind of other issues, you know, I had as a child. But when I was real little, I remember going to this church. And I had to use the restroom. And we had been to that church for quite a while. So I knew where everything was in the church. It was a huge church, a really, really huge church. And the bathrooms were in the basement. And I remember, specifically, I will never, ever forget this. Never forget this. And I remember, as a matter of fact, I will never forget the person. I'll never forget anything about this person. And the person who I'm referring to actually has a Facebook page, and they're friends of friends that I'm friends with. But anywho, I'm not going to give out no names. But I remember when I was a little girl, like 6, 7, 8. I can't remember the exact age. But I had went downstairs to use the bathroom. And they always keep all the lights off downstairs. Because unless it's Sunday school down there, or they or they baptizing people. Because we had a big pool, like, some churches have big old pools, and they have like a big old lid that they cover it with, and they lock it, and then they put a big old tarp over it, and just to make sure, you know, nobody gets in the pool, no children, you know, something. So it's really secure. But you know, or dinners or something, you know, because the kitchen was downstairs, you know. So if it ain't nothing like that going on, then it's just really dark down there. But I'm so used to the church and the darkness down there. I know where to go, turn the light on, go to the bathroom, do my business, come back upstairs. So I go downstairs in the church, and I'm coming down the stairs, and before I can turn to go to the ladies' restroom, I hear a psst. I'm up here like, it's pitch black, y'all. It's pitch black. Not even the lights on in the bathroom because the doors are shutting the lights off in the bathroom. So there's no light coming from anywhere. And I'm just looking around like, what? Somebody down here? And I just keep walking. You know, I'm a little kid. I just keep walking. I hear psst. And so I turn around and I'm like trying to adjust my eyes to the darkness. And I see a man sitting in the dark. This was actually one of my friends in church's uncle. I ain't gonna say no names though. I ain't gonna say no names. Anyway, I look over and this fool got his stuff all out. All out. Just come here. Come here. I'm like, man, if y'all y'all ever heard that lady scream on Psycho? Was that Psycho, that movie where she in the shower? I screamed so loud. I screamed so loud. And I just took off running. And I was running up the stairs. I tripped up the stairs in my little shoes and my little dress. And I ran all the way upstairs and I plopped on the pew and sat next to my mom. And my eyes was watering because I didn't know what exactly was going on at that age. But I knew it wasn't right. And the man he scared me because he was in the corner and it was pitch black. And after adjusting my eyes, I saw his pants was down and he just had this look on his face. Like, I know if I would have walked into that corner, I would have came out a whole different person. I already know. He would have got me. And yeah, I told my mom, and I don't know what happened after that because I was only like, I swear I was like 6 or 7. I can't remember the exact age, but I know I was a little girl. And I'm like, after that, I'm like, what the heck? It hit me a few years later what was going on because my mom didn't even sit down and explain it to me. She was just like trying to keep me at her side every time we go to church, and she just got really overprotective of me at that time. And I'm like, okay, so life went on. Okay, so we started going to another church a few years later. I was a teenager by then. I think 12 going on 13. We started going to another church. And the pastor of this church, her son, was always like overly flirting with the teenage girls in the church. When I say overly, I mean like trying to touch all, hey baby, what's your name? Just all, what's your phone number? You got a me? Just all like, just like an irritating, like, and me, I'm like, get away from me, boy, bye. I'm like, because I wasn't attracted to him. He was just like, and mind you, I was like 12 or 13, so I wasn't even at that time into boys. I was a tomboy. I wasn't into boys at that time. I'm like, boy, bye. So anyway, I shrugged him off. He kept trying forever to get with me because I was the new girl in the church. Eventually, I got a little older. And I, graduated from high school, and I was still kind of going to that church. But this guy had left the church and had moved out of town. Come to find out, he had raped 3 girls that I know in the basement of the church when we was going to church there. See, sometimes the signs are there. Like I don't victim blame at all. I do not victim blame at all. Sometimes the signs are there, but when you're a young child and you have a young mind, you have a young brain, and your senses is not always there. You trusting of people, and things happen. And I was in somebody's live earlier. Some of y'all was probably in that live with me. Who was it? Let me think. Michelle Brown. That's who it was. And I wasn't in her live. I'm lying. I was watching her live, but it was after the live was over. And somebody called in and was like, when she was referring to R. Kelly, she was like, oh, them hoes wanted it. We talking about 12, 13, 14. Oh, them hoes. They knew what to expect, them hoes. And Michelle Brown and like the entire chat was like, what the hell is wrong with you? And this lady talking about she's 48 years old. And everybody's like, you cannot be 48 years old and talking like this. Like, really? You really up here talking about calling these younger, oh, they hoes, they, they mamas raise hoes, they mama raise thoughts, they mama raise, and we like, you know what, I'm not even gonna get all into the R. Kelly theme because we've been talking about it forever, but yeah, church people sin. I mean, I don't trust nobody. And yes, one queen, it was scary. It was really scary. And it was really scary, and I will never forget it. And I knew who the guy was, so I know him still to this day. Sometimes I might see him out and about, like at a grocery store, and I'm like, ugh, and I'll just turn and walk away because I'm like, he probably don't remember me, but I remember him. And then like he has a Facebook page, and the people that I'm friends with, who he's related to, he's on their page, and so I'm like, there's the predator. And it's like, I can't help it, but it crossed my mind, and I'd be like, I wonder, did he ever get somebody in that basement? I wonder. But I mean, this stuff happens all the time, and I don't know what happened, but the guy continually came to the church, so I'm assuming it got swept under the rug, just like a lot of these stories. They get swept under the rug in these churches, whether they black churches, white churches, Baptist, Pentecostal, Catholic. I mean, it keeps getting swept under the rug. But because of these allegations against this pastor, Joseph White, this bishop, and them not doing about it, his victims are all coming together and they're getting lawyers. And like I said, the 3 victims who did the interview, they are, who is the lawyer? The lawyer that they getting, he actually, again, like I said earlier, he had represented some victims in a Catholic church sex scandal, and he's now representing some of Bishop White's victims. So, I don't know, I'm going to keep my eye on the story and, see where it goes, but there are a lot of victims. This is like 20 years of victims, and one of the victims, he said that one time when they were traveling and they had got a hotel and got a king or something kind of bed or whatnot, he wasn't thinking nothing of it. He was young. He was like 16, and he was like, okay, we gonna share a bed. He jumped in the shower and got dressed in his PJs and, got in the bed and jumped under the covers and, was gonna go to sleep. He said the victim jumped on him, pounced on him like a man would a woman. And he started like feeling all over him and trying to kiss all over him. And he was like, what is you doing, Pastor? What is you doing? And then some of the victims said, he started showing them porno flicks, around the age of 13 and 14. And that's basically where the grooming process starts. The grooming process usually for male victims of men, it usually starts with things like that, with like porn shows, like, oh yeah, this ain't nothing wrong with this, basically, yeah, hugging and patting, I'm telling you, it's a mess. But like Durham, one of the victims that I was telling you about earlier, he had alleged, I was confused. He said, I'm thinking in my head, this is my pastor. This is my bishop. This is one of the top bishops around the world. So he wouldn't do anything wrong to me. And he said he believed that the bishop preyed on him because of the fact that his home upbringing wasn't too well, and he didn't know, what a father figure was. He didn't know what it was like to be loved. He didn't have that growing up in his life. And then another one of his victims in Ohio alleges that he had a physical relationship with Bishop White when he was under the age of 17. And he claims that the first time was after he went to the store with the bishop, and he said he saw the bishop purchase some Viagra. He said he saw him purchase some Viagra. And then when they got back to the hotel, because y'all gotta keep in mind, these hotel, for y'all who came in late, these hotels. This man, this bishop, he is like a really top bishop, and he has over 100 churches. So he travels a lot because he has over 100 churches. So he travels a lot. So they oftentimes travel and they get hotels, for their church members and stuff. And he said the bishop had, allegedly took off his clothes and started, sexually, assaulting him. And he was like, man, when I was reading up on this and reading all the all the statements from the victims and the interviews and all that kind of stuff. And then they showed a clip of the pastor. And I truly believe, and y'all give me y'all opinion, but I truly believe a lot of pastors who are predators feel this exact way. And I'm going to read y'all what this pastor, it was on videotape, one of his sermons was recorded, and this is what, he was in the middle of preaching, and he told his congregation this. Now he's preaching, so just picture him up on the pulpit preaching. In one of his sermons, he said that God said to him, I'm going to pretend like I'm a pastor, said to him that no matter what law may pass, and no matter what decisions people may make about me, none of those laws can govern me, because God says I'm in the spirit. What y'all think about that? Keep in mind, there's allegations going back 20 years. The first ones was in 1994 for the church that he originally belonged to. They swept it under the rug. The church didn't let nobody know. They didn't call the authorities. They didn't call the police. They swept it under the rug, and it just disappeared. They put him out the church without explaining to any of the members, that he was allegedly sexual assaulting boys in the church. They just put him out because, like a lot of these pastors, they just put him out. Sent him on his way. What he do? He opened up his own church and tells everybody everybody that he's acquainted with, oh, I'm just starting my own church. God told me to branch out. So I'm going to branch out and I'm going to just open my own church. And lo and behold, he opened over 100 of them doggone things. And he's been allegedly sexually assaulting, raping young boys from minors up to married men for over 20 years. And every time they depend on the church, they take it to the board. The board does nothing about it. So these victims, they're like, okay, we're not going to get no justice with you. We going to the real authorities. So that's what's going on. Yeah, he should have been struck by lightning. And yep, Mama G, they typically seek out children who they determine, a strong man is not present in a child's life. Exactly. And like I was saying earlier, some of the victims were being victim shamed. They're like, okay, he did this to you when you were 16. You like 21, 22 now. Why you didn't say nothing then? The same thing they do to girls or women. But, yep, DC sounds like a pimp. And, it's like, this bishop is now like, he's really old now. I can't remember how old they said he was. But, like they say, some men don't always come forward immediately. They're less likely to than women because they don't want to be labeled, you a punk, you weak, you a soft, you gay, you knew you was gay, you a homosexual in the first place because of the fact that you allowed some men to take advantage of you. And that's how a lot of men feel. They feel if I say something, if I come forward, people gonna think, I'm soft, he ain't no real man, stuff like that. The stereotyping, which comes from basically prisons. That stereotype comes from like prisons. Because if you get turned out or raped or something in prison, you weak. You wanted it anyway. You was already gay when you got here. That's things they say to men in prison. But yeah, they gonna pay off them victims, and it's a lot of victims. I don't know if they gonna because some of these victims, like I said, they already hired attorneys One of them is a big attorney who's represented some victims from Catholic Church, um, sexual assaults from priests in Catholic Church. So one of the attorneys is representing, a group of the men. So that they got over 100 churches. Not only is this man probably about to go down, but they gonna get paid. He got over 100 churches. Now they might end up with one church left. After paying off, they might end up with, one church left and maybe one Cadillac left. You know what I'm saying? But one house left. But I think they gonna come down on that man. But it's just crazy because the church boards, they conspire to keep all that stuff a secret. And so it's been going on allegedly for 20 years, over 20 years. What's this, 1994, 2004, 2014? Over 20 years that this has been going on. Because again, the first allegations was in 1994. At least the first known incident was from 1994. Now, it could have been some before then. They never, told anybody about it. We don't know. We don't know. But y'all check that story out. It's Joseph White, pastor in Cleveland, Columbus, Ohio. And he's been a pastor there for a very long time. He got over 100 churches. It's just crazy. It's just crazy. I just hate how these churches do this, how they cover up stuff and they try to protect these big time preachers and these big time bishops and priests instead of protecting the children, the young boys, the young men, in the church, the ones that look up to this priest. Like, I couldn't believe they said some of the parishioners, some of the members, they actually have said that he is like the closest thing to God. He's the holiest thing on earth. Like, and they have no idea of all the stuff that people have been making allegations about for the last 20 something years. That's crazy. That's crazy. But so I don't know, Mama G. I don't know if they gonna pay it off because, they ain't been quiet lately. They ain't been quiet. They've been speaking out and speaking up. So I don't know. We shall see, honey. We shall see. But oh yeah, by the way, back in 1994, when the first allegations came out, they said he did not deny the charges. They told him they would put him out. He left. He did not deny the charges. He didn't make a statement. They said, we're gonna put you out, and he just left. And then last year, the Channel 3 station, the news station in Cleveland, they was doing a story on it, and one of the board directors sent them in a confidential letter that stated that last year they started investigating him for allegations of inappropriate conduct, against the bishop. Again, instead of being turned over to authorities, they just swept it under the rug. Swept it under the rug. So we shall see, but I don't know how many victims are going to come forward. How many more, brave victims, because you have to be brave to stand up against somebody that high up in a community, that's recognized all over the world. Somebody who church members call the closest thing to God. He has over 100 churches. You have to be brave to step up to something like that, And as a man, them, when they get raped, molested, assaulted, even if a woman or a young girl gets raped, sexually assaulted or whatnot, it's just a different feeling for men, because normally, no shade against the gays, the bis, any of the LGBTQ. Normally people look at, man, woman, have sex. Men usually want to have sex with women. That's, or if they rape them or something, they think it's just more common. But it's not. Like we were talking about last week on one of my lives, it is beginning to seem like more guys are being sexually assaulted than boys than there are women and girls. But it's more swept under the rug because the shame I think that men or males feel from, like people, labeling them as punks or, soft or, weak, things like that. You ain't no man, you know. So, but I hope all them victims, I hope they come forward. If all these allegations are true, I hope they get their justice. And get what they can get out of it, whether it's a lawsuit and get pain and suffering, But I don't know. I think they gonna sue the pants off that church. The pants, no pun, no pun. But they gonna sue the pants off that church, and they might not have one church pew left after they do that. So, because it's a lot of victims, a lot of victims. But anywho, y'all let me know what y'all think about this. If y'all heard anything about the story or got an opinion or anything like that, let me know. Put it all in the chat. If you watch this video later, you can hit me up in the comment section, and if you got something to say about this video or something you heard or updated information, anything like that, put it in the comment section. But in the meantime and in between time, Prime Time Squad, I'm about to get off this live. Y'all stay safe. Y'all be blessed. And I'm out. Deuces. Good night.